And hello again and welcome. The Mighty Dash is halfway across the country, about an eighth of the way around the world, heading from Chicago's Midway Airport to Buffalo, and from Buffalo on to Montreal, and then out to the Maritime Provinces and Greenland and Iceland, across the Atlantic Ocean. That in the background on the right is a very, very, very tall Comiskey Park, home of the Chicago White Sox. It seems like it would be accurate in scale if every member of the White Sox team were 25 feet tall. The houses are rather big too, and so are the trees, and so is the snow all over the place. It is a kind of yucky day. This is Fly Tampa's Chicago Midway scenery. A little bit of sun, a little bit of clouds, a little bit of snow, a little song, a little dance, a little seltzer down your pants. Props are spinning slowly in the breeze there. We are going to get ourselves going, push ourselves back, go out to this taxiway and taxi all the way around here to 31C and get out of Dodge there, and then make our way across Indiana and northern Ohio, and then to Buffalo, New York. So let's get this show on the roads. We'll call for push by hitting data and not by hitting cross-fill. Let's try that again. Data, services. And let's see, how do we want to push back? We want to push back straight and then nose left. If I just push back nose left, it'll ram us into the jetway, and you know how painful that can be. So, just a reminder, in the dash, before you push back, you have to turn the nose wheel steering to off so that when the tug attaches to your nose wheel steering and pushes you, it doesn't spin you all over the place. So, push back straight, come up here, get ready to start, turn off our bleeds.
We are ready now, please release parking brake.
Come down, release the brake, come back up.
Parking brakes released.
Closing back now, you're clear to start the engine number 2.
Okay, so we look down here, wait till the oil pressure comes up, and move our condition lever to start. And now we can change our push to nose left. Let ourselves come around here. Push ourselves back right onto this taxiway here. We've already gotten clearance to do it. And there we are.
Push back completed, set the parking brake.
We will set the parking brake, and before we forget, we'll turn the steering on.
Parking brake set.
Pop up here again. Move the start selector to 1.
The tow is free and clear of nose gear. Clear to start the engine number 1. Have a nice flight.
Dankeschön. Okay, so down we come. Watch our turbine speed come up. Our oil pressure is popping up. Up we go. Turn on our auto feather, turn on our pumps. Bring our number 2 up to full. Turn off our APU, turn off our bus tie, turn our bleeds to min, turn our taxi lights on, and our logo lights on. On come the heats. And this plane always flies with pitot heat. Pumps are all on. Let's set our trim. Done and done. All right, we're going to fly runway heading 318 until we get to DME 0.7, at which point we're expecting vectors, but we're just going to vector ourselves. So what we'll do is we'll put ourselves into a right turn towards our en route course. So we're in LNAV mode, but we really want to be in heading mode. And there we are. And we are cleared to our final altitude, which is 250. Set our flaps to 10. Bring up the second prop. Turn on our bleeds. See that we've got a clear caution panel except for the parking brake, which is as it should be. Spoilers and taxi. Reset our clock. There we go, there we are. Gust lock is on. Turn our radar to standby. Did not want to do that. All right. Clear, I'm not going to be able to do that without getting a little bit closer to that. All right. Already got runway heading set, 318. So let's taxi out there and go. Put our gust lock back in there. This is, of course, a very storied airport in the history of aviation. It was for many years the busiest airport on planet Earth until O'Hare took its place. Runway 31 right is not in use, so we've been cleared to cross. And by crossing, that means crossing the very last 25 feet of it, but there you have it. We've been dodging Southwest 737s all day. And you know how painful that can be. And I will confess, I'm not really that familiar with the taxiways here, so I believe this gets us to the end of runway 31 center. Sure seems like it, and this is why Midway never expanded. It is surrounded by the city of Chicago. Check there, clear to our left. And clear to our right. And we'll take the runway. And we just made our passengers a wee bit sick. Not to mention ourselves. But there we are lined up. Put on the parking brake, turn off the gust lock. Check our trim, check our flaps. Check our nose wheel steering. Check our heats, check our bus tie. Check our lights. Bleeds are min and on, and everything is copacetic. So with that, we're in heading select. And let us go flying. And there's 80. And we're looking for 125. And we're gonna get it. So again, we're gonna fly this until 0.7 DME. Gear up. Flaps up. Props back. IS mode. And now we'll go direct to Lukey. As we get a little bit hammered. Pop ourselves into nav mode. And it will offer us a chance to turn. And we'll take it. As we do, turn off our auto feather and our pumps. And we are escaping a nasty day here in Chicago. As we go through this turbulence, I'm going to try and keep a constant rate turn and a constant rate of climb, and not try to correct every little bit, because to do so would be futile. Turn on our ice protection. Constancy is a virtue here. And bring our bleeds up. When in doubt, sit on your hands. Gear is up. We're climbing in IAS mode. Going through some turbulence, but trying to maintain, as they say, an even strain. But cranking in a little bit of rudder trim here so that we're a little more congenial with the laws of aerodynamics. And I'm hand flying this, and I think if you want to get a good feel for how to fly the dash, you should probably hand fly up to cruise and try and hand fly some of your descents. Certainly hand fly an approach. I'm just walking in the trim until I can ease off the controls entirely. Trim that a little nose high. Let it come down. Pick up some speed. It is a lot easier to trim a real aircraft because you feel the forces on the controls and then you trim until the forces go away. With a simulator, unless you've got a force feedback stick, what you need to do is you need to trim and then move your control back to neutral and trim as you move to neutral. And keep your eye on what the plane is doing and see if the closer you get to neutral, the less the plane is doing. So for instance, if you're pulled back and you want to trim the plane, you put in some up elevator trim as you let the stick come forward until the airplane either levels out or continues the attitude you wanted it to keep. And that is a lot harder to do than trimming a real plane, where you just pull until you get the plane where you want it and then roll in some trim until you don't have to pull so hard. Bring out the lights. The party's over. Trim down a little bit. Got a little ice. We're already set for that. Nice clouds though. And we're just hand flying here. We're using the flight director as a guide here. I'm now going to bring back the indicated airspeed because if we were to climb at the angle suggested by the indicated airspeed that's there, we would be climbing far too slowly. Again, looking for flight level 180. At which point we will switch to standard altimeter. And you can't see my hands, but I'm really not doing much. Really not doing much at all. Alright, we're coming up on our transition altitude and we've got a ways to go. So what I'll do is I'll cut the video right here and we will pick it up for our arrival into Buffalo, which, as you'll see right here, is a nice curved RNAV arrival. So we'll come in to Susky and just loop around this way and just come right on down, which is fun. Try and hand fly it too. I don't know what it is. I don't find it very interesting to hand fly a straight-in arrival, but you give me a curved arrival and I'm all over it like a cheap suit. So, with that said, I bid you adieu, at least for the moment, and see you in just a bit. Well, as you can see, we've had something of a time of it in the dash as the sun goes down over Lake Erie. We are covered in ice and our boots are going. We are at a much lower altitude than we wanted to be because we lost a little bit of cabin pressurization, so we had to make an emergency descent from 250 down to 200, and even now we are monitoring things carefully. Cabin altitude came up to about 11,000 feet. Warning light went off. Differential was a no good, and the cabin altitude was rising. So, not sure why, but make sure that doesn't happen again. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to turn up our lights here on our center console. And we are getting close to top of descent now. And for some reason it doesn't display. There it is. Okay, we're 18 minutes away. The other thing you didn't get to see was we flew almost to final approach, and we had an out-of-memory error. Now, we've been flying from one Fly Tampa piece of scenery to another, and I've got a feeling that that might have something to do with it because both of them are very beautiful, but very, very feature-packed scenery. So I turned down some of the features on Buffalo because we are going to be coming in at night, and every little bit might count. So what I'm going to do here is very quickly look and see how much virtual address memory we have left, and we actually have a gig left, and so that is good. Anytime I just want to see what the dome light here does to our... See, these don't light up, so I'm a bit at a loss to try and see these in the dark. That's one thing I discovered on our approach. Setting a couple of those buttons was very hard. What I was doing, and what you'll see me do again, was hand fly the approach because it is easy and it's fun and it's good and it helps you get better, and the better you get at hand flying, the more fun it is to hand fly, and the more fun it is to hand fly, the more you do it, and then you'll never get into crazy ass situations like so many airline pilots have gotten into lately, in which they smack into the ground while twiddling knobs on the autopilot or scratching their heads asking what it's doing now, or worse, pull when they should be pushing, and all sorts of other crazy stuff. And it's unfortunate, but it happens, and some of it happens because pilots are these days hesitant about flying by hand, and at some companies, and this is where the vicious circle comes in, they are actively discouraged from flying by hand because hand flying leads to trouble if you're not good at hand flying. So one way to stop trouble from bad hand flying is to ban all hand flying. And you get the circumstances where 500 feet above the runway, on comes LNAV and VNAV, and it doesn't come out until 500 feet above the runway on arrival, if that. And I see some of that in the simulation world, and it's too bad because, I mean, you know, takes all the variety out of it. Takes the feel out of it. Takes the engagement out of it. You might as well be pushing a button. Or two. And I don't know why I think that this is the Big Dipper here, but it looks like a dipper. See if we can spot Polaris, the North Star, which would be somewhere up around here. I can't, but that's just because I suck. And we're getting close to TOD, and at TOD we're just going to fly the airplane. Our first constraint is 5,500, so we'll set that. We're going to, as American Airlines former training captain Warren Vanderberg used to say, go click, 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 which in a Boeing airliner means you click twice right here to disconnect the autopilot and click twice here to disconnect the auto throttle. This here, in this case, does not control the auto throttle, it just controls the toga bars right here, so a little bit different. But you still have to click the autopilot disconnect twice because the first time it warns you and then you click it again. We've got our landing V-speed set. Let's just check our pressurization again to make sure it is in the green, and it is. Thank goodness. Check our icing over on our little windshield spigot. We got nothing. Turn on our wing inspection lights so we can actually see the ice on the wings. Just spinning ourselves around this way. Pretend like I'm Plastic Man here. And we look out on our leading edges and praise Lindbergh. We got nothing. So that's good. Also, for some reason, my weather radar flipped into standby, so we'll put that back on because I think we're coming into a little radar weather. .12 to top of descent. Too early to arm approach. Do an OT on the flight path. Flight plan, 80 miles to go and then 128 to come down, 1,450, let's make it 1,500 feet. We can do it. It's a beautiful night. At least it was until everything hit the fan. Give our passengers a chance to do what they do best. And a little ice. How about a little ice, Scarecrow? Turn on our boots. I'm still at a loss as to why we lost cabin pressure. No leaks and no problem with the packs, so I'm totally not sure, but we are going to get nice and icy when we go through here. See if we pick anything up. Yep, see there's a little coating right there. Look at that. It's cool that they model that. Here, look. There's a little coating of ice right there. Now, of course, the boots don't take that off. But it's a good proxy. It's good to know if you're going through icing conditions. Of course, the way you really know is by the spread in temperature here and things like that. But a quick way to find out if you're picking up some ice is to just do that. In a second, our VNAV deviation is gonna display. And in a second, we'll seat the passengers. Make a little announcement, tell them to make sure they flushed and return their toilet seat to the downright and locked position. Check our landing altitude. That is good. Sit them down. And get ready to go downtown. Check our altimeter also. Fort Buffalo 2993 at the moment. Set that in our standby. Conditions seem to be improving there slightly. And the time since we ran out of virtual address space, which is mostly a thing of the past in P3D version 3, but not entirely. It does a lot better with swapping out stuff and swapping in other stuff to preserve your 4 gigs of virtual address space, but it's not perfect, and if you run into a scenery area that's got a ton, there's still not much you can do about it. A ton is still a ton, and a ton is probably more than it can handle. So our top of descent will be just a little bit less than 50 miles away from Susky, and 50 miles is 15,000 feet, and we have to go down 14,500 feet, so we'll make it. We're right between Cleveland and Erie now, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So Pittsburgh would be down there. And Erie if we had to divert, if we had an emergency. Erie's a good enough place to land. The V-speeds are set. Altitude is set. We can't set VNAV mode yet because the vertical deviation scale is not illuminating. We can't arm the approach yet because we're still somewhat out of range, but not too far. And I don't know if I showed you this before, but I'll show you again. It is we're going to hit this as our initial approach fix, and then we're going to swoop down this way. It's going to be fun. And I get the feeling we may not get rained on here, but we are going to get iced over. Let's see what we got. Nothing much. Remember, radar reads moisture. It does not read cloud thickness. You can have the thickest clouds in the world, but unless you've got precipitating moisture in it, it's not going to return on the radar. Excuse me, it's been a long day. So what we're going to do in our approach is we're going to cut across the last bit of Lake Erie right into the Buffalo area right there. And fly past the airport on essentially a right downwind, and instead of turning base and then final, we're going to do one continuous curving turn from downwind to final. Just basically a 180. Ordinarily you wouldn't do that if you were flying visually because you lose your visual cues. One of the reasons why a pattern exists is so that you can always keep your eye on the field, whereas if you're flying away from the field and then you make a 180 to get there, you obviously at a certain point in it can't really see the field. But we are not visual, so we can do that. We're in the mighty dash. We can do almost anything. Except guard against running out of virtual address space. So let's cross your fingers, everyone. Let's hope that prepared is nice and not naughty. Running out of virtual water space here. Let's see what our approach course is. 235. We'll set that at some point. Just keep that in the back of our minds. Runway is set on our HUD, even though we're not doing a Cat 3 approach with full HUD guidance, but might decide we want to use the HUD just for convenience because it presents us with a nice 3-degree glide path and everything else sort of as one-stop shopping from here. So nothing wrong with the HUD. Checking our VNAV. 3 minutes from TOD. Which makes me wonder, where is our vertical deviation scale? But I think it's coming very soon. I think it comes when we're 20 miles away. But let's actually find out for once instead of just talking out of my nether regions. Let's put it to the test. Okay, there's 20. No. Maybe it's 10. Could it be as little as 10? I tend to think 15. Also, I'm just going to move this up here because I see that little stick pusher shut-off thing, and it looks like a warning annunciation. There we go. Maybe it's 2 minutes. Don't know. But as soon as that kicks in, let's pop ourselves into VNAV mode. We are going to fly. Because why not? Because it's fun. That's why we got into this. So you can fly planes. I already know how to punch keys and operate machinery. I have a microwave oven. brother has one of those bread machines that you dump a bunch of ingredients in, punch a bunch of keys, and you walk away, and like 4 hours later you've got a loaf of bread. And it's a pretty good loaf of bread. But there is absolutely no feeling of accomplishment to it and no fun at all. You don't knead the dough, you don't fill the baking pan, you don't watch it bake in the oven. As it gets golden brown, it just comes out like a joyless brick of countertop cooked, anonymously mixed dough. In the words of Chico Marx, that's no good. Why, you can't even see the gluten forming. So we're going to fly this all the way down from TOD all the way to the ground. The ground at the airport. The runway at the airport. And while I'm at it, just because I'm going to turn our pumps and our auxes on. And roll out our power and fly the airplane. It's going to take a minute to trim out, but once we trim it out, we are going to be able to basically fly it with our fingertips. So I'm just working the trim now as I keep the flight bars on the magenta line there. Trimming a bit. Trimming a bit more. Trimming the rudder. As we settle into our descent. I'm getting closer and closer to the center with the stick as I'm trimming. This is not as good as a real plane in which you just pull, you feel forces, and then you trim to eliminate the forces, and it's easy. People with a lot of experience in real planes, and I am not one of them. I'm somebody with a little bit of experience in a real plane. But people with a lot of experience will tell you that the hardest thing about flying a simulated airplane, unless it's a level D simulator with control loading and things that make it feel like you're flying, is that you don't have the feel. And if you don't have the feel, it really makes it hard. But we're coming down very nicely here. And now I'm just barely using my fingertips. Making tiny little corrections right near the center of my my stick. We're a little bit high, maybe 50 feet high. And we're oscillating a little bit up, a little bit above and a little below as we correct, but the corrections, because we're trimming, are getting smaller and smaller as we go. And that's the aim. Unfortunately, in a PC desktop simulator, trimming is a little bit iterative. You trim and you adjust and you adjust and you trim, Again, in a real plane, basically you get it in the condition you want, and then give the trim a couple clicks or a couple spins until the force you're feeling through your hands goes away. But we're doing well. You notice our vertical deviation is 3 feet. Not bad. That is the wages of trim. And our lateral deviation is just a little bit because we're intercepting a new course. And my throttle burped again. And we have to pull a little bit through this turn because we're trimmed for a straight and level descent, and turning, of course, reduces our lift. Or it doesn't reduce our lift, it vectors off our lift in one direction, which is not necessarily perpendicular to the ground. And down we come. Relax the back pressure a little bit here. Let us settle into a slightly higher rate of descent to reacquire our VNAV path. The other thing I'm going to do right now is arm the approach. And the final thing I'm going to do is work our bleeds and lights, and to do that I am going to pop in the autopilot very quickly because can't really do it otherwise. So on come the lights, and on comes our 850 props, and off can come the dome lighting again. Probably not, strictly speaking, realistic, but gotta do something. Now you'll notice when we come back onto our descent, we'll be better trimmed, and that's because the one thing the autopilot can do is if you're slightly out of whack, it will basically trim you out. You can't use it to save any gross unusual attitude, but now watch, we'll pop out the autopilot, and we are trimmed almost perfectly. Now when we get to Susky, we're going to level out for about 6 miles. So I'm already below our 250 knot restriction, and I'm going to have to again put in the autopilot and adjust my lights because I can't see enough. So and I'm sure there's a way around this, but I don't know what it is just yet. So let's just set our altimeter at 2993 and turn off our lights again and turn off our autopilot again. And again, hope that we don't run out of virtual address space, because I really want to fly this approach. It's a cool approach. So we're keeping again the flight bars on the magenta. And our restriction coming up is 5,500. I'm going to set our final restriction, which is 1,700 here. Just have to make sure not to blow through any of the restrictions here along the way, which are helpfully notated for us. You notice our lateral deviation is 0. Got a little bit of a crosswind here that's trying to blow us that way. And we're just a little bit high. We'll fix that. Okay, we're 5 from Susky and we're 1500 above, which is exactly where we want to be. As soon as we turn towards Buffalo Stadium, we will let our speed decay to 200, bring in our first notch of flaps. Okay, 3 from Susky, and let's just start to shallow out our descent right now. Perhaps not that much, but a little bit. Because we can't get below 5,500 until Buffalo Stadium. And around we come. Gotta watch that minimum. Blew through it the last time. We can creep down towards it, but that's about it. Uh-oh, the airport's loading. This is where we got in trouble the last time. And let's level ourselves off so we don't bust through there. There we go. Get a little turbulence. Pop in the first notch of flaps. Still got 4 miles to go, so we really do not want to descend anymore. We don't want to climb either, but that is due to a little bit of turbulence. Wow, quite a bit of turbulence. And a big wind, which is going to affect us. It's going to first blow us to the right on this big turn, and then it's going to blow us to the left. Okay, there's 5,500. Can't get below that. Until, well, we've got 1 more mile. Stay above that, and then we can come down to 5,000. And that's 5 miles, so it's going to be a very shallow descent there. Matter of fact, that's about it. I'm working the trim a little bit rapidly there. Okay. It's coming down ever so slightly. Barely coming down at all. 1.5 miles to go. And 1 mile. Remember, in 1 mile, if you're coming down at a standard rate, you can go down 300 feet. Okay, there we go. So Zatem is 3,500. And then we're going to do this long turn to final. Roll off the power here. Okay, I have to get a little steeper. Now, we can start coming down in earnest. And we're going to get on this curve. And I'm going to put down the gear. We'll start to come off the speed for real. Put in our next notch of flaps, and in a second put in our final notch of flaps. We'll get below 172. There we go.
2,500.
And in a second, our LNAV approach is going to arm. Okay. It's 1,000 above our final approach fix altitude. Coming over the suburbs of Buffalo. And there's the airport. And that would be our outer marker on an ILS approach. But we are not on an ILS approach. We're on a bumpy, crosswindy LNAV approach. Wow. I'm going to carry a little bit of extra speed because of that. And look at how we're drifting. Look at that. That is just as we predicted. Keep those needles centered.
1,000.
Bring in a little power. Keep our pitch from bobbing up and down too much. Put in even more of a crab. Bring the nose up ever so slightly. Lose a little speed. Alright, we're visual. And let's let ourselves drift a little bit. You know what? Center ourselves up a little bit.
Plus 100. Plus 100.
This
Minimums.
is a rocky
Minimums.
little ride. We're going to put this down fairly firmly. Look at the crab I've got going. Don't want to lose too much energy here. A little bit flat.
100.
I'm going to kick out the crab at the last minute. Maybe a little less than the last minute. And as I do, I'm going to kick to the left, or push to the left,
30.
and rotate my wrist to the right
10.
so that we don't strike a wingtip. And somehow our gear lever popped up. And also somehow the nose wheel steering does not work. Interesting. That is really bad. Okay, so we'll turn off here. We did not run out of virtual address space. And I'll investigate our tiller problems in a second. Let's see if it works now. Now it does. I wonder if that was just the wind. I tend to doubt it, but we'll look into it and report back. In any case, welcome to Buffalo, where it's cold and it's wet. And it's actually quite a nice airport if you've ever been. And with that, our next hop is going to be to Montreal. And I will see you next time.